we come here as we are, and yet we will not leave here the way we came. We come here as we are, and yet we will not leave here the way we came. Say that with me. We come here as we are, and yet we will not leave here the way we came. That is the mantra of our Vibrant Living series that has been going on for several months now, bringing in some leading edge people from all over the world. We are so blessed here at Unity of Santa Barbara. I'm Temple Hayes, one of the spiritual leaders here, and we are delighted that all of you have come. I will assure you that amazing things are happening at this Mecca Center in Santa Barbara. And if you haven't come to see us in a long time, I'm happy to report we are live, we are making a mighty noise, and we are energized by Spirit. So come and check us out. Tonight is no other than any other time. I invite you to turn off your phones, your pagers, all your special equipment, because everybody will make it until after the program tonight, okay? So we can be totally present and immersed in the now, because we are so blessed to have the amazing Jack Canfield. And so to introduce him tonight is Dr. Jim Quacco. Let's give Jim a hand.
Thank you for joining us. We're delighted to have you here. We are very fortunate to have this wonderful man address us today. I just am very grateful. I've heard Jack speak more than a few times, read a few of his many books, and know that the effort he's made to teach us how to think about ourselves, how to live, how to enjoy life is quite remarkable. One of the things that I admire most about Jack, however, is his intense curiosity. He shared with me at one point when he was in college that he was always one of the last people to leave the bull session that went into the wee hours. But he has continued to extend himself. Whenever we get together and I hear the latest news about various kinds of things, it's not just a little bit. It's the details behind it. And I think that's how we grow. It's a simple skill on the one hand, but it has to be exercised to work. And so as a result of his curiosity, it has led him to vast areas. And fortunately, he also has the skill of synthesizing it, making it practical so that we can improve our lives. So thank you very much for joining us. Please welcome Jack Canfield.
Thank you. When you said that about the last one to leave the class, I had a French class early in the morning, and I always left that one last too, because the professor would come out into the group and he'd shake me and say, "You can wake up and go now." Someone was speaking French to me earlier. We got through about 3 sentences worth, and then I ran out of words. Anyway, interesting memories. So I use a lot of slides, and it was interesting when I got here. I'm going to stand up a little taller so I can actually see this screen. I said my physical therapist is going to be really happy because I have to look up. Normally I'm like this because I'm on the computer all day long. But anyway, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I would share with you tonight. Normally I run like 3-day, 5-day, 7-day seminars, and to boil it down to like 45 minutes with Q&A is a challenge, but I think it'll be useful, so we'll begin. I want to just share, for starters, let's see if we can get the slides to move. Maybe not. They were working earlier. There we go. So I want to share with you my life purpose, which is, you can hit the slide, Brent, if you will, back there. Just hit next, if you know how to do that. Up, there we go. It's going to be fun. Okay. Can you hit play again on the upper part of that, the arrow on the left, and start the whole thing? Good posture, though. The answer is no. There we go. So, there we go. So, anyway, my life purpose, whether you can read it or not, is to inspire and empower people to live their highest vision in a context of love and joy. So, I wrote the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. There's over 500 million copies of those books in the world to inspire people. And then, thank you. And then did the about 700 books, like the Success Principles and so forth, to empower people, give you the tools to achieve the goals you want in life. And what life is, I want you to think about this. Life is like a combination lock. If you know the combination, it doesn't matter if you're male, female, white, black, yellow, brown, old, young, went to college, you can go to college. If you know the right numbers in the right order, then the lock opens. So I'm going to share with you some of the numbers in that combination of living a vibrant life that I've discovered, and hopefully it will be helpful to you as well. So this is my grandson, Ozzy, and I put him up there to show what vibrant living really looks like. And I'm going to share with you some cartoons. I always start with cartoons, because when you laugh, you secrete endorphins into your brain. And laughter is one of the things that puts us in a high vibration. So, here we go. He said, is that a copycat or a CAT scan? Okay, so this says CAT scan on the wall. And it says you have to expect some cutbacks with your new medical plan. This one says, well, your weight is perfect. You just happen to be a little 11 feet too short. He says, I take it you haven't had sex for a while. Says the doctor asked me to spend at least 1 hour per day on the treadmill. Things that tell the truth. Let's see. Small children, drunk people, yoga pants. You all know what emoticons are. These are Botoxicons. He says, that's an old photo. And they're looking at the rings on their tree. And she says, I knew she was lying about her age. That's one of my favorite ones. It says, my memory really sucks, Mildred, so I changed my password to incorrect. That way, when I log in with the wrong password, the computer will tell me your password is incorrect. Oh, go back. It says you can, oops, geez, so far. Hold on. Well, we'll go with this one. I love this one. He says, after listening to his owner drone on for hours, Ralph suddenly realized he was not cut out to be an emotional support dog after all. All right. I'll tell you one last just humorous story, and then we'll delve into the more serious stuff. But we did a book called Chicken Soup for the Surviving Soul. It was all stories about people who had cancer and survived. And one of the people that submitted a story was a guy named Norman Cousins. Some of you may remember him. And he was a famous editor and so forth, and wrote a number of books. And he was in a hospital, and he helped popularize the term psychoneuroimmunology. Your psyche, your attitude affects your nervous system, affects your immune system. So it's important to be happy and not afraid and so forth, which we learned even more about during the pandemic. And he wrote a story which was called The Wee Nurse. And he's in a hospital, and he had this nurse that he didn't like very much, and she would come in every morning and say, did we eat all our breakfast today? And if he was in a bad mood, she'd say, we haven't had our bowel movement yet today, have we? And he wanted to get back at her. So one day she came in and she said, he looked over and said, we need to take a urine sample. She handed him a little specimen cup. And he said, well, if you'll go out of the room for a minute, we'll make one. So she went out in the hall. And he looked over on his breakfast tray. There was apple juice he had in the trunk. So he poured the apple juice in a specimen cup and rang the little bell. She came back in and she picked it up and she went, my, we're a little cloudy today, aren't we? He said, here, give it back. And he grabbed it from her and he drank the whole thing down. And he said, let me run it through again, see if I can make it come out clearer for you. All right. So vibrant living, vibrant, what does that mean? talk about vibration. We want to be vibrant. We want to be alive. We want to be tingly and all that good stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about vibration. We want to have our vibration be high as opposed to low. Low is depression and anger and fear and all that good stuff. And when we're in a state of high vibration, we're looking at things like joy, gratitude, positive expectations, passion, compassion, enthusiasm. I love the word enthusiasm. It comes from the Greek entheos. Theos meaning God, that's the root of theology. When we're filled with theos, God, then we're enthusiastic. So we see people that are alive. We see people that don't seem like they're alive. We often refer to them as walking as dead. So we want to be optimistic. We want to be in a place of neutrality, allowing what is to be. You know, if you have studied any of you, how many have studied Byron Katie's work? Yeah, good. Just allowing things to be the way they are. All right. So I want to not just talk at you tonight. I want to do a couple exercises as we go through this. And there's a exercise that has to do with gratitude. It comes from the Institute for Heart Math. And it's called the quick coherence process. So I'm going to walk you through that real quickly. So I'd like you all to sit up somewhat straight, if you could. And if your feet touch the floor naturally, if your legs are long enough, you can let your feet be flat on the floor. If not, just do whatever's comfortable. And then go ahead and close your eyes for a moment. And begin to focus on your breathing. And see if you can make your breathing a little slower, a little deeper. And maybe focusing on inhaling for the count of 6, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling for something like the count of 8. What happens when you exhale longer than you inhale? It creates a relaxation response. So just do that for another 30 seconds. And as you continue to breathe slowly, begin to focus on your physical heart, where your heart is located in your chest. And imagine as you're inhaling, that you're inhaling through an opening in your chest, even though it's actually through your mouth or your stomach, your nose. But imagine you're inhaling through an opening in your chest right into your heart. And with each breath you take, imagine your heart is growing larger, just like when you inhale and then you exhale into a balloon and then you pinch it off so the air you just put in doesn't come out. And then you blow and again it gets a little larger. So with each inhalation, your heart is expanding. And as you continue to breathe through the chest into the heart, imagine now the breath coming in is radiant white light. So you're inhaling white light into your heart. And your heart is filling up and expanding with radiant white light. And now think of a person, a place, or a thing that you really appreciate. The feeling of gratitude and appreciation. And really allow yourself to feel this gratitude and appreciation for this person, place, or thing. Let it permeate your entire body. You might find that a smile begins to form on your face. And then imagine sending that white light from your heart, like a beam emanating from your heart through your chest, out toward that person. It could be an animal, a place, or a thing. And see them receiving that allowing it to fill them and surround them, protect them with your gratitude and appreciation. And then imagine pulling that beam of light back into your heart, and from your heart, filled with radiant white light, sending that through the rest of your body, up into your head, down your arms, into your hands, down your body, into your torso, your lower back, your buttocks, your hips, your legs, all the way to your feet, filled with gratitude and appreciation for yourself, for your body, for your mind, for the fact that you have this vehicle that you can move around the world in, this vehicle that can bake bread and play the piano and write books and hug people and make sculptures and paintings that we often take for granted. And just notice how you're feeling right now. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back into the room. Very good. How many of you noticed a shift in your experience of yourself during that? Yeah, it took us all about 3 minutes to do that. So that's available to you anytime. It's called the quick coherence process. Okay, good. So let's talk about manifestation for a minute, because all of us want to manifest things. We'd like to create the life we want, the things we want to own, the experiences we want to have, and so forth. And an interesting piece of research done at the Institute for Heart Math was they were playing around with DNA. And if you don't know, DNA is a helical structure like this. And it has at the end of it something called telomeres. And they're like the shoelaces at the end of your, or like the plastic part at the end of your shoelaces. And you all know what it's like when they break and then you try to get your shoelaces through your tennis shoes and they don't want to go because there's nothing different. As you age, those get shorter and shorter and shorter, and when they get so short that they're not there anymore, then your cells don't replicate the way they should. And so what happens is they had this DNA in a test tube, and they were intending to unwind it through thought. And what happens is when they basically were playing with two things, intention and with feelings, gratitude, appreciation, love, high feelings like that. And when they just did the emotions, nothing happened. When they just did the intention, they were intending it to unravel, visualizing it, unraveling, nothing happened. But when they simultaneously felt the love and the joy and the gratitude and intended it to unravel, the DNA began to unravel. And they could also ravel it back up again. Is that a word? Ravel it back up? Twist it back up again. So when you're visualizing the things you want, because we all get taught we should visualize what we want, have affirmations, see ourselves experiencing it and all that. It's really important. The feeling part gets left out a lot. And so it's really important to have that feeling at the same time that you're intending. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right. So couple gratitude things. I would recommend, how many of you have a daily gratitude practice? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. If you don't, what I would encourage you, at least one time a day, have some practice of gratitude. It could be writing in your journal 5 things you're grateful for. It could be, one of my favorites is something called a rampage of appreciation, comes from the work of Esther Hicks and Abraham, where you literally walk around for about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes and just notice everything and you appreciate it. Like I appreciate there's a floor here instead of dirt. I appreciate that there's a microphone and sounds happening so I don't have to yell. I appreciate my doctor here, Jim, for inviting me to come do this. I appreciate my wife who's sitting here, not just because she's here, but for a million other things that she does for me and loves me and so forth. I appreciate, those of you, I know several of you in the audience. I appreciate that there's nice chairs to sit in. I could go on. You just notice everything. We have running water. We have toilets that flush, things we take for granted. And often when I'm running a workshop, I'll have people go out for about 15 minutes and just do a rampage of appreciation. They come back crying because we take so much for granted. And when you start realizing all the things we have, because our tendency is to focus on what we don't have, what we want, what's not here yet. You know, the more money, and then we'll retire and everything will be wonderful, or my book will be finished, you know, and so forth. And the reality is we forget to be grateful for what we have. Some of you, how many of you saw the movie The Secret? Okay. Joe Vitale, who was in that movie, tells a story about being in he was really, 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 really poor at one point. And he's living in one of these apartments like you see in a movie, where there's linoleum floor, one plastic table, 2 chairs covered with naga hide, a light bulb hanging out of the ceiling, and a mattress on the floor with a couple sheets and a blanket. That was, and a pillow. That was what he owned at that point. And he went to the library and got a book on how to manifest your goals and all that. And it said you start with gratitude. Read any of the books by Napoleon Hill, you know, Science of Getting Rich, all these books, you start with gratitude. And he said, what the hell do I have to be grateful for? And then he said, well, I have a pencil and a pad. I could write down my goals. I could write down affirmations. And then he got a little metaphorical, poetic. He said I could erase my limiting beliefs with the eraser on the pencil, you know. But he started realizing he had more than he thought he had. He had running water in the apartment. He had a bathroom in the apartment. He had some friends that he knew. He wasn't outside in the cold or the rain or the wind. And that was the beginning of him moving up. And now he owns like 6 exotic cars. He's a multi-millionaire. He does seminars all over the world. But it's that starting with being grateful for what you do have. So Rampage of Appreciation we talked about, keep a gratitude journal. Write a gratitude letter. Think about this. I was talking to some people, well, one of the guys I once talked to was the coach for the UCLA basketball team. I think they won like 11 championships and all that. And a friend of mine took a workshop from me, and he didn't play for UCLA. He actually got cut from the team. But he said, this guy, anyone remember the coach I'm talking about? John Wooden, thank you, John Wooden. So he got cut from the team, and he said, when John Wooden cut you from the team, he didn't just put up a list of the guys who made it and everyone else came and looked at it and felt like rejected, which is what normally happens. He would bring you in and say, you know, these are the things that are good about what you do, and I recommend you try out for the volleyball team because you're tall, you're good, but, you know, whatever. And so he wrote John Wooden a thank you letter. And John Wooden wrote him back and said, at least 50 people that have come through my UCLA teams have gone on to be pros. I never once got a thank you letter from any of them. You're the first person that ever appreciated me for what I contributed to their lives. So think about that. All the people that have contributed to you. Well, you know, my high school Latin teacher who convinced me I could actually go to college. I didn't think of myself that way. And, you know, so the point being, think about maybe someone you'd like to appreciate. Email, phone call, letter you could write. There's a guy in Japan, his name's Wahei Takeda. He's considered, he just died, but he was considered the Warren Buffett of Japan. And a friend of ours, Inga and I know, named Ken Honda, who lives over there. Ken's kind of the Tony Robbins of Japan. And he wrote a book called Happy Money, if you ever want to read a good book, Happy Money. And he interviewed Wahei, and Wahei said all day long he just repeats one mantra, arigato, which means thank you. Arigato, 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 all day long. And he was worth hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that. So again, something like that can work as well. Now our computer's not doing what it's supposed to do. I think it's more about what's happening back there than anything between me and you, but I'll keep going. Maybe they can fix it. All right. So another thing I recommend you do is something we call a mirror exercise. Every night you stand in front of a mirror before you go to sleep, and you talk to yourself for about 1 minute. And it's very weird the first few times you do it, literally. Most people, when they do this, by the end of it, they go, oh my God, they're so happy it's over. But what you do is you just stand, you look yourself in the eyes, you say your name, like in my case, Jack, and then you appreciate yourself for 3 things. Number 1, what you accomplished that day. Hey, Jack, you wrote a chapter for your book. You made that call. You did whatever. Any disciplines you kept. You meditated. You did your exercise. You ate healthy, etc. And then any temptations you overcame. You didn't stay up playing Words with Friends until 1 in the morning or binge watching, 3 episodes of The Bachelor or something like that, right? So the reality is, and then you end with, I love you. I love you. And this is where most people go, you know. And what I know is if you can't say I love you to yourself and let it in, the level of that, the opening that you have for yourself is the amount of love you'll let in from other people, right? And so I always tell people, look at it, say I love you, and then take it in and hold it for a moment. Try that tonight. The research we've done with that is this 40 days in a row, without missing a day, it will literally change your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your negative self-talk will start to get replaced by positive self-talk, etc. I have one woman that took a seminar with me like 12 years ago. She's done it every night for 12 years. And she was one of these hard-ass New York people that you wouldn't want to hang out with. And that's one of the most lovely people. She teaches at yoga retreat centers and all that kind of stuff. So it really shifted her. So I would encourage you to do that as well. Oh, good. Here we go. So what I'd like you to do, turn to someone to your right and then your left. You're going to like whoever those people are. And you can turn to someone behind you or whatever, because I don't think you're going to want to cross the rows. But just tell them 1 or 2 things you're grateful for. Like, you know, when you think about all the things that you could be grateful for, what are 1 or 2 things that you're grateful for? Say, do it to the right, do it to the left. And I'll give you about 45 seconds to complete that task. I just want to have you experience saying it out loud. I'm grateful for what? Go ahead and begin. Okay. Let me have your attention back up here if I could. Shh. Let me have your attention again. Thank you very much. All right. So another thing that I encourage you to do is I call it the hour of power. I did a foreword to 2 books about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic happened. One was called The Billionaire Secret. A friend of mine interviewed 21 billionaires in 17 different countries in 20 different industries. It took him 3 years to even get to them, let alone interview them. And he found out there were some similarities between them. And I was surprised by this. Every one of them, including an 81-year-old guy in China who makes more of the windshields for cars in the world, another guy who makes ceramics for, like, you know, Japanese spoons in Japan, and just, you know, another guy, he runs fast food chains in Indonesia and the Philippines, guy who is opening one supermarket every 7 days in Russia. I mean, big players. They all meditated. They all got up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. They all read for at least an hour a day. So we have this thing we call the hour of power. 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of reading, 20 minutes of exercise. And whatever exercise you can do. Walking, for a lot of us at this age, is fine. Treadmills, ellipticals, you know, get in the gym and work out, whatever it is. But get your body moving, and also read, keep stimulating the mind. And we're not talking about novels for this part. This is like self-help, spiritual, you know, things. I know, my wife just said, come on. Would you read like a novel a day? She's
20 pages.
And so anyway, so I encourage you to do that. And it starts your day. There's a wonderful book called The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma, where he talks about, he has a whole other thing he adds to it. Journal writing is another one. Self-awareness that comes from that. But have these morning disciplines you do. And I just learned a new thing from Robin, his newsletter about a month ago, and it's radical how it's changed what I'm doing in my own work. He calls it the 90/90/1 rule. 90/91. What does that mean? The first 90 minutes of every day for 90 days, focusing on your number one goal. Now, that could be fitness, that could be inner peace, that could be finishing your novel, that could be getting your new business off the ground, that could be, anything you want it to be. What normally happens is the most important stuff gets put off, especially if you're starting something new. And we know from the research there's something called willpower fatigue. As the day goes on, your willpower to do things goes down. So if you can get that first 90 minutes. Another wonderful book, if you haven't read it, is called Eat That Frog. It's by Brian Tracy. And I love the title. And what it means is, let's say I told you you had to eat a frog, a live frog, before midnight. When do you think most people would eat it? 11:55, right? However, what do you think you were thinking about all day long? Eating the frog. So if you're going to do that thing that's the uncomfortable thing that you need to do, it's called get it out of the way. Just get it done. Get her done, as they say, right? So that's a very valuable thing to do. We also teach something called the rule of 5, which is if you have a major goal, again, 5 action steps a day. They don't have to be huge. Write 5 pages, call 5 people to come to your weekend workshop, whatever it might be. But the idea is a lot of work about getting into action. And there's a new book I just read called The 5-Second Rule. If any of you read that? It was written by a woman who was lying in bed and her business was going down, her husband's business was going down. She was depressed. And she had just watched the night before one of these spaceships go off at NASA. And they go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So she's lying there in bed and she just went, I need to get out of bed. I want to get out of bed. And then she went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And she sprung out of bed. And so now every time she has to do something she doesn't want to do, she just goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then she does it. It's a nice little hack you could use in your life if you want to. All right. Talked about all that. There we go. I love this. I named my dog 5 Miles so I can tell people I walk 5 miles every day. All right, so obviously exercise, you want to do that. That'll raise your vibration. I love this quote, you can't hire other people to do your push-ups. I can't send Inga to the gym and have her work out and have my biceps get bigger. It just doesn't work that way. So again, it's all up to you. I want to show you something about what stops a lot of us from getting into these things that give us a higher, vibrant life. I want you all to fold your hands like this. You were psychic. You were right ahead of me. She just folded her hands like this before I said to do it. I love it. Now, notice which thumb is on top. Oh, that's why. She's following the screen. Never mind.
Just give me.
Yeah, give her away. Now you know what I live with, right? All right. So notice which thumb you have up. How many have your right thumb on top? Okay, these are the better thinkers. Hold your hands up high. Very good. How many have your left thumb on top? These are the sexy people in the group. How many people have neither thumb on top? They're just kind of like next to each other. Anyone like that? One person? These people think they're sexy even when they're not. That's what the research shows. No, just kidding. There's no research on that. But fold your hands again. Fold them again. All right, now, what I want you to do is unfold your hands and move all the fingers up a notch so the other thumb ends up on top. Don't just move the thumbs, but move all the fingers up so the other thumb naturally ends up on top. How does that feel? Weird, uncomfortable, wrong, yucky? What does your body want to do? Wants to go back to where it was, so let it go back. Now, right here in this exercise is why most people don't live amazing lives. Because you'd rather be comfortable than do the uncomfortable things that produce what you want. Because everything you want that you don't have is outside your comfort zone. Asking for what you want, saying no to people when you know it's not for your highest good to do it. Saving money, spending money, whatever it is, there's things that you know you should do that you're not doing. And the reason we don't do them is it's uncomfortable. You know, maybe we would like to be in a different profession, but we don't want to go back to school. Or we don't want to ask our boss for a different assignment or a raise, or tell our husband we're not happy with how we're being treated, whatever it might be. So vibrancy comes from being alive. And one of the things about aliveness is it often requires you to step out of your comfort zone and do something different. Does that make sense? Okay. Now here's the cool thing. If you held your hands in this new position, the uncomfortable one, for about 5 minutes or less, guess what? It would stop feeling uncomfortable. You'd get used to it. Your body has a built-in system to say, this is not normal. Is this safe? Your brain wants to keep you alive. So it's very conservative that way. But most of what we want is outside that conservative space. So we have to be willing to step into it. So we're not asking you to like jump off cliffs or anything like that, although people do that. Take Tony Robbins' firewalk. I did that once. Jump out of planes. You know, those are the extreme things you do. You can't do that. But just every little day, maybe you go to a different restaurant. Think about this. When you go out to eat dinner, you probably go to the same 4 or 5 restaurants, order the same meals, have the same 1 or 2 drinks you always drink the same kind of wine you usually always drink, you know, and it's a habit. You can kind of trust it. It's comfortable.
You don't have to tell them everything we do.
But you want to begin to stretch out, try new things. You know, if you've never eaten Thai food, you know, experiment. All right. I said to my wife the other day, we should do a comedy routine together. She's taking me seriously tonight. Okay. Like everybody to stand up if you would. If you're able to and it's comfortable. So I want to teach you a little exercises from Qigong. Qigong is a Chinese art of flowing energy. And if you've seen Tai Chi where people are doing stuff like this, you know, where they're coming in and doing all that stuff. So this is comes from that same root. And basically, this is a way to energize yourself, and it's easy. And all you do is you bounce up and down. You're not leaving your feet. Your knees are bouncing up and down. You can take your hands, put them in front of your navel, what they call the danqian, and let the wrist be loose. You have a bunch of meridians that flow through your wrists. This helps open all that up. Now we'll just do this for about a minute. But if you do this for 4 or 5 minutes in the morning, if you do it for 17 minutes, you'll start to lose weight. So instead of just watching Good Morning America or, you know, whatever, you can sit there and do this while you're watching it, right? When I first learned this, I learned it from John Gray. John was in China. John Gray wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, Children Are From Hell. Do you remember that book? No, I added the last part. But he was over there and he noticed there were no obese people in this village. And he said to the village elder, how come there are no fat people here? And he said, oh, we do bounce and shake in the morning. The whole village gets out and they do this. And when he was teaching it, he had us like put our hands in front of our heart chakra and then our throat chakra, and then up here like this. And we're all doing this. And all of a sudden, you know, he said, I feel like a Baptist minister. You know, everyone's out there. Yeah. But just let's go another 30 seconds. Do you feel yourself starting to get a little warm? Yeah, energy's moving. Good. Okay. Stop and then close your eyes and notice what you're feeling in your hands. Notice what you're feeling in your body, your face. Can you feel a little more vibration, a little more tingling? Very quick, simple way to wake yourself up. So if you're one of the people like me who sits in front of the computer all day doing Zoom calls and things, just get up every hour and do a little bounce and shake. Okay, go ahead and sit down. Oh, let's all stand up one more time. This is the exercise portion, up, down, up, down. Everybody turn to your right, which is that direction over there. And just within the section you're in without crossing the aisles and things, what I'd like you to do is step forward to put your hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you. And we're going to give the person in front of you a neck and shoulder massage. People at the back, we are going to turn around. We're going to turn around. You'll get a turn. Just go ahead and give them a neck and shoulder massage. And if there's something you want they're not doing, like harder, softer, lower, you know, one of the secrets to getting what you want in life is asking for it. So feel free to do that. I've actually had 2 marriages come out of this exercise. Now, take the flat palm of your hand, and not the karate chop, but the palm, and just slap on the muscles on either side of the spine all the way down from the shoulders to the waist. Wake them up, wake them up, wake them up all the way down to the waist. Wake them up, wake them up. Wait a second. Stop, 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 stop. Several of you have a strange definition of where the waist ends. That's all I got to tell you. I'm watching you. Turn around. Let's give it back to the person who gave it to you. Keep on doing that. And again, go ahead and slap on their backs all the way down to their waist. Okay. All right, go ahead and stop. And I want you to, here's the deal, before you sit down, shh, 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 I want you to hug 2.5 people. Figure it out. 2.5 people.
Don't receive. It's so cute up here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, go ahead, take a seat. All right. I'm going to see if my tech team and I can do this back here. So if you hit 47 and then enter on the keyboard, that should take us up to slide number 47. Let's see what happens. There we go. Good. You guys are excellent. Give them a hand back there. They're good. Okay. So one of the things I always have my students do is make a list of 20 things you love to do. 20 things you love to do. Pet the cat. Listen to John Denver songs, you know, whatever it might be. Play pickleball. That's the great new rage, right? Unless you live next to someone who has a pickleball court, right? It's like you want to kill them. They're so loud. You know, whatever it is you love to do. Like you see images up there. Play the guitar, play golf, listen to music, dance, get a massage, garden, whatever. And every day, make sure you do one of those things. I was giving a talk on a radio. I was on a TV show, kind of like Oprah, but it was up in Canada. And this woman came up at the end and she said, I haven't been happy for 7 years. And I said, what happened 7 years ago? She said, my husband died. And I said, what did you used to do 7 years ago? What do you stop doing? She said, I used to garden. I used to play the piano. I used to paint. She named 3 or 4 things like that. I said, do me a favor. For the next month, every day, do one of those things. and then send me an email. And she sent me an email a month later, so I'm happy again. She had stopped doing the things that made her happy. And so sometimes we need to be reminded to do that. But what I recommend you do is make a list, 20 things you love to do. I learned this when I was in graduate school. My professor called it the anti-depression list. And he said, put it on your refrigerator in the bathroom. So where you're going to see it, so it reminds you of these things that you love to do that you can then go ahead and do. Okay. So let's go to slide 55, 55 enter. That'll get us there. So Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz was a football coach at Notre Dame. I met him at a conference down in Florida. It was all Catholic CEOs. Remember that conference? Yeah, we left early because it wasn't the fact they were all Catholic CEOs. The weather was awful, but anyway, it was like right next to the ocean and it's terrible weather. But anyway, so one of the things that people that spoke was Lou Holtz, and I was writing a book at the time, and it was you just hit enter and it'll see what happens. Just hit the enter key, yeah. So I was writing a book called You've Got to Read This Book. And I asked a lot of people if they would submit a story. And I asked Lou when I was there, could you submit a story about a book you read that changed your life? So it was like, you know, what are the books that changed people's lives? And his book, if you hit enter one more time, was called The Magic of Thinking Big. And the idea that if you think big thoughts and so forth. And in that book, he said, or in the article he wrote, he said the reason he submitted that story about that book. He was a football coach at South Carolina before he got to Notre Dame. And he lost his job. And he was very depressed about it. And his wife had to go back to work. She was a radiologist, and he didn't want her to have to work, but she did. And she comes back the next day, and she's got this book that she bought at the supermarket. You know, they have books at the checkout counter sometimes. And he reads it. And one of the things was to make a list of 100 things you want to do before you die. We now call that a bucket list. And so he made a list of 106 things. And his wife gets home from work, and he says, honey, look at this list. The book said you should make a list of 106 things you want to achieve before you die. And he had all these things on the list. You know, win a national football championship. He was Catholic. Meet the Pope. Go down the Snake River in a river raft. Go underwater in a submarine, land an airplane on an aircraft carrier. He had all these adventurous things he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to meet the president at the White House. And she reads it and she says, Lou, add one more to the list. He said, what's that? She goes, 107. She says, write down, find a job. So anyway, he did. But when he was giving that talk, he said he'd achieved 101 of his 107 goals. And he started telling, and this is what I recommend to everyone, make this list. If you have a website, put it on there. I put mine in a book I wrote once called Dare to Win. And one of the things on my list was I want to meet Kenny Rogers. I liked him. I like country music. And I got a letter one day from Kenny Rogers. He says, I'd like to meet you. And I'm thinking, really? And so I called him up and I said, I always wanted to meet you. I love your music. I love country music. Why do you want to meet me? He said, well, you're a best-selling author. I've always wanted to write a book, and I want to be a bestseller. So he invited me to Las Vegas. I got to go backstage, you know, afterwards. There were a bunch of other celebrities there. It was way cool. And so the things I wrote down, I wrote a list of 101. I've achieved 84 of them. I'm 78, so then I've added more. So I have well, thank you. You applauding that I survived this long, or that I achieved 84 of them? Anyway, and a lot of times people say, well, I'm so old, I'm too old, you know, I can't make a list of 100 things I want to achieve. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I have a story in one of my chicken soup books about a woman who was in her 80s, and she said, everyone's died, even my doctors have died, you know, all my friends have died. And she said, you know, there's nothing left for me. And I wrote her back and told her I thought there was. She ended up going on a cruise. She met some new friends. I said, start making younger friends. You know, one of the great pieces of advice I got from a guy named Dan Sullivan, who runs something called the Strategic Coach Program in Chicago, he said, as you're getting older, make friends with 20-year-olds. and 30-year-olds and so forth. Because when you get to be 100, they'll be 50, but you'll have friends that are alive, right? So, and also they're more fun than a lot of our older friends. You ever notice you get together with your older friends and 90% of the conversation is about the doctor you just saw, the ache in your hip, all that good stuff. And so anyway, I would really strongly encourage you to make a list like that, and then pick 1 or 2 things that you want to do every year, and then go do them. All right, let's see here. Let's go to slide number 59, if we could, 59. We're jumping around here because I'm running out of time. Muhammad Ali has a great quote. He said, "Impossible is a big word thrown around by small people who find it easier to live in a world they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion." And then he changed, if you hit enter one more time on that slide, he says he changed impossible to I'm possible. In other words, there's nothing impossible. We never thought we could go to the moon or go to Mars or, end diseases that we've pretty much wiped off the map and so forth. So anything you want, if you believe it's possible, you can do it. And I want to introduce a word I want you to eliminate from your vocabulary. The word is I can't, or it's really 2 words, I can't. And I'd like a volunteer to come up here. I wanted to demonstrate something. Who would like to play? You, sir. Okay, come on up. What's your name? Alan. Very good. Why don't we stand up here so everyone can see us? And are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right.
Okay, could you stand facing the audience? Sure. And is there anything wrong with this arm, any injuries or anything I need to know about?
No.
Okay, would you put your arm out like this to the side? Out here like this. And I'm going to push down on your arm, but I want you to resist. Don't let me push your arm down, okay? Good and strong. Now, what's something you think you can't do? Like I can't do ballet, I can't sing opera, I can't play the mandolin.
I can't do ballet.
I can't do ballet. So I want you to say that out loud.
I can't do ballet.
And notice what happens to your arm. Now I want you to say, I can do ballet.
I can do ballet.
One more time.
I can do ballet really well.
And notice what happens now. Good. So relax your arm. So what happens when you say, I can't, you actually make that more real. Your body kind of agrees with you, becomes less able, less capable. It weakens you. You have neurons that fire in your brain that activate these muscles. And when you say, I can't, it slows down that neuronic firing, if we could use that term. And so this muscles get weak. I'll show you one more thing. I learned this recently down in the rainforest. I want you to think of somebody you don't like. Don't say their name. Okay? You got somebody?
Yes.
Okay.
It happened really fast.
That happened really fast. Okay, so put your arm out again. And I want you to imagine they're standing right where that plexiglass lectern is. Mm-hmm. And I want you to send them the thoughts, I don't like you, I hate you. Whatever the thoughts are, just feel those feelings toward them.
It's hard to do. I wear a love on my head.
I get that, but let's own the human part of us for a moment. Okay.
She's right here.
So go ahead, send that energy, and notice what happens to your arm. As hard as you try, it just gets weak. Now I want you to send, the best sometimes you can do is, I know you're doing the best you can with the limited awareness, skills, and knowledge you have. But you could also send forgiveness, you could send love, you could send good wishes for their health, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then notice what happens now. Oh, good. So anytime we're in a state of not love, which is a lower vibration, mm-hmm. it weakens us. Anytime you're in a state of loving. I was in the rainforest doing plant medicine, and we had to ask the question that night, help me forgive the unforgivable. And I thought of Putin, Vladimir Putin, because I think he's creating a lot of havoc in the world. And I had to okay, gotta forgive Vladimir Putin. And I know that when we're upset with somebody, it's a projection of things we don't want to own about ourselves, right? So I'm thinking, okay, what is Putin about? He wants to be significant. He wants to create the USSR again. He'll go down in history as the guy who brought Russia back together, the whole Soviet Union. And as soon as I saw that, so I'm in this plant medicine state, I saw my office. And I'm walking into my office, and it's just like the whole first wall, plaques and trophies and all these things that tell me how amazing I am. how significant I am. And I went, oh, I'm Vladimir Putin. I'm not out killing people, right? But all those things that upset us with people live in us as well, and we forgive them. We own the parts of ourselves and forgive that as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, give Alan a hand. Thank you. All right, got just a couple more minutes left. Let's see. I want to show you a video, and this one has sound that goes with it. So if you're ready back there, it's 6-0. Hit 6-0, enter. And I want to show you about the importance of the fact that you can accomplish anything. I'm sorry, 6-1. We want 6-1. Just go to the next slide. There we go. And then hit enter one more time. It'll start the movie. Okay. And if you can turn the sound up a little bit. So this is a guy, if there is no sound, I'll kind of narrate it. He was a paratrooper, and he weighed about 400 pounds. He was told that he would never walk normally again. And you can see what he's struggling with right there. And he accepted that that was a fact, that he'd never walk normally again. And here he was, 47 years old, disabled veteran, and he'd basically given up. He was injured as a paratrooper in the Gulf War. He jumped a number of times, took his toll on his legs, his back, his knees, gained a lot of weight, seriously weight. And he says, wouldn't you have given up too? And literally, he spent most of his life in a wheelchair, couldn't walk or run. Exercise seemed impossible. Yoga instructors turned him away. And this is a guy named Diamond Dave and Diamond Dallas Page. And he's an professional wrestler who got into yoga because his back got really hurt. And so he decided to take him on and work with him and watch what happens. Started to seriously lose weight. Lost 100 pounds in 6 months. So whenever you're thinking it's not possible, I really want you to get that no matter how difficult or challenging it might seem, if you're willing to put in the effort, if you're willing to put in the time, you can achieve anything you want. And the key here is believing. And as he said, never give up. And just watch this. This is amazing. Look at the difference. Lost 140. That's amazing to me. So I hope that's inspiring to you to do it. I want to share one quick last thing with you, and then we can open up to Q&A. Let's go to slide, hold on. Go to 79, slide 79. And then go to the next slide. So this is a guy that Inga and I met at a conference. It was a high achievement conference. I mean, everyone was there, like the guy, George Lucas from Lucasfilms, and Coretta Scott King, and Julie Andrews, the guys that started Google. I mean, it was a rarefied atmosphere. And I only got invited because of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And so we were meeting all these amazing people. And one of the guys that spoke, we all got to do like a little TED Talk. And the reason they do it, they had all these graduate students there, about 200 of them in the back, and then maybe 50 of these luminaries in the front. And Bill Clinton spoke, and it was wild. Anyway, so what happens is that Ken Behring spoke, and Ken said his life had gone through 4 phases. So if you could hit enter one again. And the first phase was called stuff. And he said he was worth about $400 million, 500, something like that. And he said the first phase of his life was stuff. And he had all his stuff, and cars, and he had boats and airplanes and all that stuff. And he wasn't happy. So if you hit it again, he said the next phase was better stuff. So buy a better house, a better car, a better boat, a better plane, and more jewelry for his wife, etc. Still wasn't happy. And the next stage, if you can hit that, he said, then I figured maybe I'm buying the wrong stuff. So it was called different stuff. So he bought the Seattle Seahawks football team with 2 of his friends. He figured I'd get to go down on the field and they'd be in the state, do all the things you get to do when you're on a football. And he still wasn't happy. And then what happened, one of his friends called him and said he was going over to Bosnia-Herzegovina to give out wheelchairs to kids who lost their legs from the landmines that were there. And some of them were born congenitally that way. And he was going to hand out wheelchairs, and would Ken like to come? And Ken said, sure, why not? So they got on his friend's plane, they took 40 wheelchairs, they land there, and they're on a tarmac, and these kids are out there in their wheelchairs and so forth. And we're not in the wheelchairs yet, they're just on pallets on the ground, and they were picking them up and putting them in wheelchairs. So I picked up this one kid, and I put him in a chair, and he looked up at me, and I started to walk away, and he grabbed me. And he said, through tears and an interpreter, he said, please don't leave yet. I said, okay. He said, I want to memorize your face. So when we meet again in heaven, I can thank you one more time. And he said that was the first time in his life he felt pure joy, high vibration. And so he came home and he started the Ken Behring Wheelchair Foundation. They've given over 40,000 wheelchairs away around the world. So he's telling this story. Can you go to the next slide, please? And then one more. These are some of the wheelchair slides. And go one more. One more. So Inga is sitting next to me, and Ken's telling a story, and she leans over, and she's crying. And she said, I think I found my purpose. And I said, what, wheelchairs? She says, no, helping billionaires find their purpose. Do you realize what would happen in the world? So find a way to serve is the message there. And I want to just do 3 more slides. So go to the next slide, if you would. So I always say, don't wait till all your ducks are in a row, right? And go to the next slide. This is a woman named Helen Klein, and Inge and I met her up in San Francisco. We were both getting awards for some, famous Californian thing or whatever. And she told her story, and I put it in a book called Chicken Soup for Body and Soul. And she was 83 when I met her. And her story is that at 55, her husband came and said, I'd like to enter a 10K race. Would you like to train with me? And she was a nurse. She was way overweight. She was a smoker, totally out of shape. And her husband said, they had a backyard about as big as this room. And he said, well, let's just run around the backyard and we'll start to get in shape. They ran around once and fell on her. She said, I fell on the ground wheezing. I could hardly breathe. And she said, that's disgusting. So she stopped smoking, and every day she would run or walk or crawl an additional lap around there. And pretty soon she's running, and she gets, the backyard's a little too small now. So she goes out and she starts running blocks and then telephone poles and adding one before she turns around. And this is what happened as a result of that. If you could go to the next slide. So here she is, 55, never ran before. Next, just keep entering. She says, has completed more than 60 marathons and 140 ultra marathons, which are usually 75 or more miles. She, at age 59, she was the oldest woman to complete the Ironman triathlon. At age 66, she ran 5 100-mile mountain trail races. In 1995, she ran 145 miles across the Sahara Desert in a 375-mile eco challenge, which included biking and rappelling down mountains and, horseback riding and so forth. And then during one 6-day run, she covered 373 miles, and one last time. World record holder, 80 to 85-year-old class, completing a 26.2-mile run in 4 hours and 31 minutes. Didn't start till she was 55. Okay? One more slide. Selma Plout, receiving her college degree from the University of Toronto at 100 years of age. And here's my favorite slide that I've gotten in the last couple of weeks. Is Julia Watkins just recently set the new world record for the 100-meter race for over 105-year-old people, which are not that many people. Now, it took her a minute and 2 seconds. She said she was disappointed because she wanted to complete under a minute. Back in high school, I ran in about 11 seconds, right? But 105 years old. You can go online, go to YouTube, you can watch her running it. Everyone's cheering her on. So the game's not over. It doesn't matter what age you are. It's just a matter of choosing to continue to play. And I think that's, just go to slide 90, if you would, real quick. He says, oh crap, was that today? So my closing message is, don't wait to get started. My challenge to you is think of one thing you can do tomorrow before you go to bed, so you get 24 hours, that would help you raise your vibration, live a little more vibrantly based on what you heard tonight. So I'll stop with that, and I'll open up the Q&A for a few minutes. Do we have a few minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Let's give Jack thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Questions?
Any question at all about anything? We'll be glad to answer it.
Well, first of all,
Use the mic.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What is I really got interested in Neville Goddard, Awakened Imagination, and
Right.
Dr. Benjamin Hardy, Be Your Future Self Now, future casting.
Right.
Don't think of yourself, how do I reach the goal? Think of yourself already achieving the goal and
Yes.
moving yourself towards it. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
I believe all that stuff a lot. So the idea is to be what you want to be, and think about it. There's another friend of mine. He starts all his affirmations with thank you, as if it's already happened. So instead of I will, or I am, or I'm going to, now I'm making $100,000 a year or whatever, thank you for making $100,000 a year, because in order to thank somebody, you have to have it already. So you want to act as if. We teach this thing called act as if. Act as if you already are who you want to become. And so the trick is and this is where the mind gets involved. It's what's the difference between being authentic, because you're not there, and yet putting yourself there. And my point of view about this is some work that came out of MIT that explained it, was whenever you visualize yourself being somewhere you're not yet, it creates dynamic, what we call structural tension in the brain, cognitive dissonance. So if you're imagining and acting as if you're already a millionaire or you're in Hawaii on vacation, but the other part of your brain says, no, you're not. You're here in Santa Barbara. Now, that's a tension between the two. The brain always wants to resolve tension, okay? Any musicians know if you hear a seventh chord, you want to resolve it with a full chord. You hear one shoe drop upstairs, you're waiting for the second shoe to drop, right? So we're looking for that closure. So what happens, we want to purposely create that tension, and then what the brain does, it gets creative to figure out how to do that. Most of us give up the dream, then the tension goes away. Oh, I grew up and I gave up the dream of being president or whatever. As opposed to holding the vision, energizing it with feeling, like they use the word Nevellize it, you know, to talk about your emotions, and the whole DNA thing we talked about earlier. And so when I'm creating that dynamic tension, the subconscious comes up with ideas. We open up our reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that gets to determine what comes into awareness and what doesn't. Because there's all kinds of things you're looking at right now, but you're focusing maybe on my face, whatever, but all this other stuff is there. What creates the focus? This dynamic tension you're creating. You start noticing things that will help you achieve your goal. You'll go into a bookstore and a book will almost jump off the shelf at you. You'll see it. It's a resource for you because your reticular activity system is honed in on anything that can help you. And the third thing is you'll feel motivated to act. Whereas before we didn't want to get out of bed and, you know, raise our hand, whatever we need to do. So three things occur, and that ultimately produces action, and the action will get you there. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I'm totally, Neville Goddard's one of my heroes. He knows what he's talking about. What else? What's my sister's name? I mean, ask me anything. It doesn't matter. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the act.
Wait. Wait for the mic so everyone can hear you.
I just want to say the act as if is so profound.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate you sharing that because the act as if works. Works in spirituality, it works in everyday morning life in your affirmations. And pretty soon, if you act as if, you can manifest your reality.
Yeah.
Just kind of wanted to share that. I'm so glad that you are emphasizing that.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything you're saying tonight. Thank you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
No question. You've
Nope.
said it all.
Anyone who wants to appreciate me, feel free. It's all good. All right. Yes, over here.
I wanted to ask earlier, you mentioned that you have students and people that you mentor and things like that. What kind of process do you put them through, and what kind of mentorship or teachings do you put upon your students?
So I've been teaching this kind of work in one form or another ever since I taught high school. That's how I originally got in. I had all black students in the inner city of Chicago, and they weren't motivated, they didn't believe in themselves, so I started studying achievement motivation with a guy who was worth $600 million, W. Clement Stone. Co-wrote a book with Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, and that's where a lot of this comes from, the newer things, tapping and EFT and so forth. But what happens is that I have, you can go to my website, jackcanfield.com, and we have workshops that are live. We have online trainings. We're doing one April 14th to 16th. It's online. It's an evening and 2 days. And we went online because of the pandemic. You know, we couldn't do live seminars. I mean, I was literally in the middle of a live seminar here in Santa Barbara, and the police came in and said, you have 30 minutes to disperse. And people have flown in from all over the country. And so all of a sudden, we had about $800,000 in deposits for live trainings, and we couldn't do them. So we had to switch to online. But we have a number of courses that are, what we call them click to buy. You can just download them and watch them whenever you want. One called the Breakthrough to Success Online. There's one called Yelp, Your Extraordinary Life Program. We have a Train the Trainer online where we train you to teach this stuff to other people, like I was doing tonight. Like all these things I do with you, they're fun, they're exercises. That's all learnable, so you can be a better, more dynamic teacher, and whatever it might be. And we also have a live train and trainer program where you come for 7 days and experience not only doing this, but also teaching it and getting feedback. And we have coaching programs. One's called the Game Changer Program. One's called Reignite Your Life. They usually start, they're about 3 to 4 months long, about 50 to 100 people in them. But if you go to the website, all that's there. Does that help? Okay, good. Anything else? Yes.
I'm curious if you are religious or what you were brought up religiously.
I don't think of myself as religious. I think of myself as spiritual. You've probably heard that phrase a lot. But my mother was Catholic. She got excommunicated when I was 6. But she got divorced from my dad. And thank God she did, because he was violent. And so I honor her for leaving, which was not easy for a Catholic in the 50s to do. And so there was a lot of Catholicism in the house, if you will. She actually wanted to be a nun until she met this guy in high school that she fell in love with. They used to call her Mother Superior in her school. And I've had past life regressions. Peter Wright does that here in town, where I realized my mother was a Mother Superior when I was a priest in a nearby monastery in Europe. So that's in there. But I grew up Presbyterian primarily because that's what my stepfather was. And then I went to Harvard, and I became agnostic for a while, just, opiate of the masses kind of thing. And then I took a Kundalini yoga class, and we were chanting one night, and the whole universe opened up, and I experienced God, So I've taken about every meditation course you can with Sufis and with the Hindus and Buddhists and whatever. But it always takes me back to that experience of God. Like Michael Beckwith down at the Agape says, not interested in a dogma or the theory, but the experience of God. And so that's where I live my life from. Does that answer your question? Okay, good.
You've done great.
Okay.
This is marvelous. Thank you very much. I just want to add one thing. You have a feedback form, and if you'd please fill it out, it would help us. Our speaker next month is Jacob Glass, so stay tuned with us all. Let us thank Jack again for a marvelous evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Marvelous.
My pleasure.